All right, Conan, right? The whole Conan saga. Yeah, well, this is where it all began. This is the tale that started it all. It's where Conan announces himself to the world, and we see him here in all his swashbuckling glory. That's right, because this is the story wherein Conan does stuff like kicking arse, among other things. And all things Conan that came thereafter, Conan the Barbarian, the Destroyer, the Freebooter, the Bootlegger, the Avenger, the Indomitable, Conan the Chemist, Conan the Chartered Accountant. It all starts right here. So, dear listener, fill your horn with ale, adjust your loincloth, because we're about to embark on high adventure in what is essentially Conan's first roaring appearance into the world. And funnily enough, since Conan's character arc through a zillion travels and adventures over the decades eventually culminated into the peak of his career, that is, seizing the throne of the Kingdom of Aquilonia and putting the crown on his troubled brow, this first story actually sees our friend Conan already sitting on that blasted throne. Which really means that every single Conan story that came out since is technically part of a massive prequel saga, really. Does that mean that this is the one and only Conan story, starting with our Cimmerian friend, already king of Aquilonia? Of course not. And hopefully at some point we will cover the other instances where the author, Robert E. Howard, made that narrative choice. A case in point, the Hour of the Dragon, aka Conan the Conqueror, in which Conan is also king of Aquilonia. There will be opportunities for us to go through all of that, dear listener, Crom willing. But where are my manners? Welcome, dear listener, to the rambling commentaries of this insane person online. This one being the very first commentary on the original Conan stories by Robert E. Howard, the brilliant author credited with inventing the character and the world he inhabits over 93 years ago at the time of recording this, because this story here, The Phoenix on the Sword, was first published in December 1932 in a pulp magazine called Weird Tales, which wasn't exactly considered high literature at the time. I mean, it was literally a monthly publication where random writers could submit their own stories, and if the stories suited the magazine's format, the editors would pay the authors a few bucks and print the stories on the pages of one of their issues. Simple enough. Now, Weird Tales specialized in the fantastic, a la Edgar Allan Poe, tales of mystery and imagination, supernatural, sword and sorcery, sci-fi, etc. And to be sure, some of the authors we nowadays regard with a little more respect than their contemporaries did had their stories published on Weird Tales. H.P. Lovecraft, Robert Bloch, who would later go on to write the novel that would become Psycho, the Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 movie. Not to mention Ray Bradbury, even Tennessee Williams, apparently. But I digest. What I was saying is that Robert E. Howard, in his fertile imagination, conceived not only the character Conan, but also the entire continent and prehistoric era that serves as a setting for the story. And it's amazing how the whole thing jumps out of the page fully formed, with entire kingdoms with their fictional names. Here, let me read you the preface to the story. Know, O prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Aries, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora, with its dark-haired women and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara, with its chivalry, Koth, that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem, Stygia, with its shadow-guarded tombs, Hyrcania, whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet. That was a crap reading, I will concede. And this is taken from the Nemedian Chronicles. So, but yeah, see what I mean? I mean, talk about world building. I mean, literally. And if you recognized this quote I just read, that's right. Some experts from it were read out in the intro to the 1982 movie Conan the Barbarian. You know, John Milius, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, this is how Robert E. Howard smacked you right in the face with a geographical and prehistorical info dump. And I mean info dump in a good sense, you know, because I dare you tell me you didn't feel immersed in that world right from the start. You immediately want to know more, don't you? And right at the beginning, we learned a lot of things. We learned, for example, that this is pretty much our world, you know, but not quite. I mean, among all those weird names, Nemedia, nope, never heard of it. Ophir, nope. Brithunia, no, although it kind of sounds like Britain or Brittany. Hyperborea, nope. Zamora, nope. Zingara, Koth, Shem, Stygia, Hyrcania, Aquilonia, no. Atlantis, oh yes, that one, yeah. I mean, the myth of this mysterious continent Atlantis, which supposedly sank into the Atlantic Ocean, is part of our shared culture. You know, Plato talked about it first, and we've been speculating about it ever since. So this is our world. Wars, what's going on here? And the sons of Aries? Who's Aries? Okay, I swear, for the longest time, I used to think the guy at the beginning of the 1982 movie actually said Ares, you know, the Greek god of war, Ares, Mars, which seemed plausible at the time, you know, a prehistory between the fall of Atlantis and the rise of the Greek civilization. Why not? I thought. Okay, confession time. I actually discovered Conan through the Schwarzenegger film first. It was only much later than I browsed through the shelves of a bookstore. I think it was the Forbidden Planet in Covent Garden, London. I'm talking like over 20 years ago. And it was only then that I came across all those pastiche novels, you know, L. Sprague de Camp, Lynn Carter, all those guys who wrote their own Conan cycles, stories after Robert E. Howard's demise. And I started wondering who was it that came up with the original mythos, because I didn't know at the time. And I wanted to start right at the beginning. You know, I was quite the purist, I will have you know. And I remember I was starving for fantasy at the time, having just finished rereading The Lord of the Rings in preparation for the Peter Jackson trilogy that was about to hit the big screen. So I picked up the 2-volume Gollang's edition, which I know now is actually sought after in the community, although not exactly fancy. You know, it's not hardcover or anything. But I see, for example, that it's recommended by Conan scholar Michael K. Vaughan in a video on YouTube called the best editions of Conan by Robert E. Howard. And he actually says the Fantasy Masterworks edition, I call it Gollang's for short. But yeah, the proper name is actually Fantasy Masterworks, because not to be confused with the Del Rey Gollang's edition. So he says, well, if you ever see these Fantasy Masterworks lying around, pick them up. If you have this edition, you basically have Conan as Robert E. Howard wrote them, without any rewrites from pastiche authors and people who handled the original text. What I have is the original text. Anyway, boy, do I digress today. No, it wasn't Ares, the god of war, the Greek god of war, but Arius, as in Aryan, I suppose, as in Indo-European, civilization. So this was our world, we're given to understand, in an era undreamed of, as the movie tells us, in that intro that appears right after that quote attributed to Friedrich Nietzsche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which I always found a bit random. Screenplay by Oliver Stone, by the way, before I forget. I thought I'd put that information out there. But anyway, what was the deal with this story and character? Coming to the world out of the blue with its own world, already fully formed, to the point of feeling like not so much as a standalone short story, but rather as part of a well-developed saga. A glimpse into a much larger story. I hear you ask. A world of prehistorical age, by the way, which I think it's time we called by its proper name, the Hyborian Age. An age that, in Robert E. Howard's own words, men have forgotten, but which remains in classical names and distorted myths, as he wrote in a letter to H.P. Lovecraft around April 1932, when he was toying around with these ideas, Hyborian Age, Conan, and so on and so forth. Well, the deal with this story is, how did this story come out? The story, The Phoenix on the Sword. The deal is, and you will find this explanation pretty much anywhere, that Monsieur Howard had been playing around with the central idea for the story for almost a year. Basically, a plot to assassinate the main guy, a king, the main guy being a king who was seen as a usurper. And this was a conspiracy eventually foiled by the hero because he's just too badass. You know what I mean? So Robert E. Howard had been playing around with this idea, as well as the fictional world it was supposed to be set in, since early 1932. Except that the original version had a different character as protagonist. In the original version, the main guy, this king character, was actually called Kull, a character that Robert E. Howard had already written several stories for. So the narrative goes. Yeah, this is the narrative you will find pretty much anywhere. So what does Howard do? Howard submitted the Kull story, Kull the Conqueror, I think it's. He submitted the Kull story to Weird Tales, and Weird Tales replied, no. That's right. Weird Tales was run by minions, from Despicable Me. No. No, okay, no, they probably wrote something more articulate, something along the lines of, we regret to inform you, blah, 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 but thank you for your manuscript, blah, 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 better luck next time. Faithfully yours, Weird Tales. Surprisingly I say, because by then our friend Robert E. Howard had already successfully submitted tons of stories to Weird Tales, which had been published by the magazine. So he was an established name. Not to mention stories he had sold to other pulp mags, Western stories, sports stories, horror tales, true confessions, historical adventures, detective thrillers, the whole pulp shebang. So what does Robert E. do upon rejection? He goes back to the drawing table, changes a couple of names, drops a subplot he decides was redundant, And voila, resubmits the story as a Conan adventure, and Weird Tales immediately publishes it in December 1932, commenting. And the Weird Tales finally, sent him a letter and said, "Oh, now we're talking. You see, when you want to, when you actually pull an effort, you can come up with some quality stories. There, find and closed your check for $17." Apparently, that's how much they paid for each original story. Now, okay, so that's the narrative, yeah? All of that narrative that I just told you, to be sure, it's a bit unfair, really. And you can appreciate that if you simply read the two stories side by side. Because the original story, titled By This Axe I Rule, did eventually get published in a collection of Robert E. Howard's work. So we now have access to it. So yeah, if you actually read them both, By the Axe I Rule and The Phoenix on the Sword, you realize that Robert did a great deal more than simply change a couple of names, Kull becoming Conan, and that's it. He didn't just do, like in that Benny Hill sketch, that dodgy restaurant where crappy wine gets resold to the same customer who complained about it simply by changing, removing the label, slapping a new one on the bottle, much to the customer's satisfaction. No, he did a lot. No, I mean, yes, for one thing, the basic plot is the same, granted, yes, but the text is not. It wasn't just a case of copy paste. Howard wasn't that kind of a lazy writer. Okay, let's go over the changes a bit. First of all, the names of two of the main four co-conspirators are also different. There are these four co-conspirators: Volmana, Count of Caraban, and Grommel, commander of the Black Legion, stay exactly the same. However, the bard, they also have a bard in their ranks. The bard / singer Redondo becomes Rinaldo. Better name choice, I think. Canub, Baron of Blal, becomes Dion, the fat Baron of Attalus. Okay, right. The two main king's aides also have their names changed. One, who we are given to understand shares some experiences with the king, they're kind of like buddy, because they share, memories of past fights on the battlefield and whatnot, to the point that he's allowed to have a forward attitude with the king, casually whistling while adjusting his breastplate in the throne room. Basically, the king's right-hand man. Brule, in the Kull story, he also had his name changed to Prospero in the Conan story, while the other one, there's another one of King's aides, whom the king sort of despises a little bit, as he's a bit of a bureaucrat, a man of plans rather than action, and the king tolerates him as a necessary evil. This guy was called Tu in the original Kull story, but here he's given a much more Latin-sounding name, Publius. Interesting choice, huh? Oh, and let's not forget that the throne the king seized was the throne of Valusia in the original Kull story, the former king being named Borna, whereas here it's the throne of Aquilonia, and the king Conan slew in the backstory, and whose crown he grabbed, was called Numedides. Numedides? I'm gonna go with Numedides, And I mean, if we really want to be picky, the king's own royal guard, the Black Legion or Black Dragons, were initially called the Red Slayers. And also everybody seems to swear by a divinity named Valka in the original Kull story, whereas here in the Conan story it's Mitra. Boy, am I being pedantic right now. And humor me for one more point, lest we forget. Kull's stories take place in the Atlantean Age, and the setting for Conan stories is the Hyborian Age, which is post-Atlantean, meaning that the history and the geography are also entirely different. But really, the huge conceptual differences will become more evident as we go over the actual plot. Shall we? Shall we sink our teeth into the story proper? Yeah? Let's go. Okay, spoilers ahead. Let's just assume that you have read the story and now you're just you just happen to be here for, I don't know, commentary to see if, I don't know why people would. I actually do that. Whenever I read a story, I like to see what other people has to say about it. So you might be, I'm hoping you're one of those people. Because if you're not, go forth and read the novella, the short story. I tell you, for I am about to spoil the hell out of it. Okay, so as I said, the setting is this. Conan is sitting uneasily, I might add, on the throne of Aquilonia, having politely asked his predecessor to step down. By politely asked, I mean he strangled him with his bare hands. That's how Conan rolls and rules. But it's all right, because Numidides was it Numidides? Do I pronounce it Anglo or Greek? I don't know. I'll stick to Numidides. Numidides was a despotic tyrant, or so we're told. And this is where I first suspected that Robert E. Howard must have taken inspiration from those pages of Sicilian history, you know, when Sicily was colonized by and ruled by the Greeks. Because Numidides is sort of like a Greek-sounding name and kind of reminds me of some of those names of the tyrants of Syracuse, you know, Daenomanids. Where's the stress go? Oh, Greeks. Daenomides, Dionysus. Yeah, that one I do know. And later on, we will encounter a character named Dion, which was indeed the name of another Syracuse tyrant. By the way, one of those tyrants was called Calippo. I've just found out. Not making this up. I mean, how can you terrified of a ruler named Calippo? It's like, oh, the tyrant demands to see you immediately, and he's not pleased. You'll have to answer to Calippo. All right, okay. Never mind. That's me being childish. So anyway, I said Conan uneasily sits on the throne because after months and months of ruling, we don't know exactly how many months, the same Aquilonians who greeted him as a liberator now resent him. You know, they view him as an upstart, not to mention a foreigner. These bloody foreigners come in here taking our thrones. Am I right? Oh, I tell you, the country's going to the dogs, I tell you. Okay, so, and this resentment is also due in no small part to the songs written by the chief propagandist for the old regime, the minstrel/singer, Rinaldo. There's another name taken from medieval epic tales of chivalry, you know, the Chanson de Roland saga. Rinaldo being the Italian version of the name of one of those characters whose original French name was Renault. That's right, Renault, like the car. Anyway, so this resentment against King Conan reaches its boiling point and develops into a secret plot to overthrow him. Leaders of this conspiracy are the above-mentioned Rinaldo, then there's Volmana, Count of Caraban, Grommel, commander of the Black Legion, that is the royal guard, and finally this Dion guy, you know, the Baron of Attalus. Each of them has his own reasons and ambitions to feed from this coup d'etat, but it's Dion who will eventually get to sit on the throne when it's done. That's what they've all agreed on, because apparently Dion has got some traces of royal blood or whatever. Except that these four guys, on their own, they're a bit crap, you know, they're disorganized, lots of ideas, but not much in terms of strategic thinking. Not to mention, they lack spies, influential people dissatisfied with the current regime. So what do? They go up a mountain. Bear with me, it's going to make sense. They go up a mountain to seek out a guy who's been living in exile in the southern desert. His name is Ascalante. Yeah, and he's kind of down on his luck right now. He used to be a statesman, but now he's an outlaw, reduced to raiding caravans in the desert. Yeah, that's his thing now. Apparently. So these four guys knock on Escalante's door because they figure they could use his skills to, quote, honeycomb the empire with sedition and unrest, you know? So basically, this Escalante is kind of like the CIA, you know? 30 years before Kermit Roosevelt in Iran, there was Escalante in Aquilonia. Gosh, what a story. So yeah, Kermit Roosevelt in Iran, look it up. CIA. Honeycombing the empire with sedition and unrest. So yeah, and this is the classical trope, you know, these small-time crooks, these four guys, the conspirators, foolishly turn into someone they don't fully understand and making the mistake of underestimating him, you know, kind of like the mob in The Dark Knight, you know, the Christopher Nolan Batman movie when these mob guys turn to the Joker. Because what the so-called Rebel 4 don't know is that Escalante's cogs are already spinning in his brains and he's already planning to let these four dudes accomplish their plan and then stab them in the back and seize the throne for himself. Huh? Quite a busy week, huh? And Escalante has got an ace up his sleeve because he has enlisted the reluctant help of, wait for it, an evil wizard. That's right, we also have an evil wizard. It goes by the name Thoth Amon. Yes, get used to this name. He will turn up again in pastiche stories, etc. An evil wizard. He used to be super powerful, terrifyingly so. But he's in a dark place right now. Okay, arguably Thothamon or Amon, being an evil wizard, I mean, he's always been in a dark place. But what I meant was he's not as powerful as he used to be. Man, everyone's career is winding down at this point in the story. Huh? I mean, even Conan, as we'll learn later, isn't exactly, you know, dancing on tables, pouring champagne on his head right now. Because being a king, turns out, isn't as much fun as it was, you know, advertised on the brochure, so to speak. Anyway, so yes, Thothamon, or Thothamon, I need to find out the exact pronunciation of these names. He's no longer all powerful and mighty ever since he lost a magical ring he used to derive most of his powers from. And on top of that, Escalante is blackmailing him. You know, that's how he recruited him to his service. See, apparently there's a guy out there in the middle of the southern desert on Escalante's payroll, and he has precise instructions if anything should happen to Escalante, and if there was the smallest suspicion that Thothamon had something to do with it, this guy in the desert, he's to open a magical scroll type thing, utter some words, kind of like the Evil Dead, and an evil sort of thing, they call it wind here, will be released, and we're not told exactly what this wind will do to Thothamon, but we imagine it's something nasty. and there isn't a damn thing Amon can do about it, because the evil wind will find him. Can't hide anywhere from the wind, you know? No. Forget it. And there's the double twist, because little does Escalante know that Thothamon also shouldn't be underestimated, because he's got plans of his own, you see, and he's just waiting for the best opportunity to make mincemeat out of Escalante. That's right. And you see, here we come to another huge change from the original Cull story, because this entire subplot was missing. I mean, Escalante did have a henchman of sorts, but he wasn't an evil wizard with his own agenda. It was just some random guy that he would order around, you know, go do my bidding. And he would just reply, yes, my lord, okay. All right, I'm slightly paraphrasing the dialogue, but yeah, that's the gist. And this is where the story begins. We find these 6 characters having just finalized, you know, the finer points of their conspiracy, you know. from a hideout Ascalante has been renting in a dodgy part of town. Let me read you the quote. In a dim alley, one of a veritable labyrinth of mysterious winding ways. So it's all decided. Tonight the king dies. And Thoth-Amon has just seen the rebel four out the door. Mind the step, guys. And the four, Volmana, Dion, Grommel, and Rinaldo, pour into the street so they can assume their position, at the royal court, ready to spring into action at the right moment. And Thoth-Amon, still in the house, slowly closing the door behind them. And all we can see of Thoth-Amon, because he's in the dark, all we can see is a pair of evil eyes glittering malevolently in the gloom. Which is such a Walt Disney-like image, isn't it? I mean, picture a Walt Disney villain from any 1940s cartoon. Except this story was written 5 solid years before Disney's first full-length animated feature even came out. Snow White in 1937. Hashtag just saying. Anyway, but we do learn a bit about this Thoth-Amon dude here. Let me read you this part. He was a somber giant whose dusky skin revealed his Stygian blood. So right from the start, Robert E. Howard is already populating his world with different peoples from the various kingdoms of the Hyborian Age. And a few years later, he would describe them in this pseudo-essay called, you've guessed it, the Hyborian Age. The pseudo-essay was kind of like a literary genre of its own, popular among writers of the fantastic at the time. Think of H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote The History of the Necronomicon. And he was so convincing that for decades, pre-internet, some people thought there was an actual book out there, been around for centuries, called the Necronomicon and filled with magical spells and rituals. And even now you might find, people who will swear, no, dude, it's an actual book, I saw it. They keep an original copy in the vaults of the Vatican City, man, or the British Museum or something. And confusingly, some publishing companies over the years have printed attempts to cobble together a book of magic spells, slapping the title Necronomicon on the cover. Okay, sorry, let's go back to the Hyborian Age. Boy, do I digress today. Here, let me read you some quotes about Stygia. Far to the south dreams the ancient mysterious kingdom of Stygia. The Stygians are tall and well-made, dusky, straight-featured people. Now, interestingly, if you look at a map of the Hyborian Age, which kind of looks like the Eurasia-African continent, really, a river called Styx runs through Stygia. We can assume that's where the kingdom gets its name from. And the river Styx being, of course, lifted right out of Greek mythology. The Styx being the river separating the dead in the underworld from the living on the other side, on our side. Spooky, huh? As for Aquilonia, which we're given to understand is the major power player in the continent, its population is described as, here we go, another quote, a more or less pure-blooded race, though modified by contact with the Zingarans in the south, and much less extensively with the Bossonians of the west and north. They are a tall race, averaging 5 feet, 10 3/4 inches in height. Their language was much like the other Hyborian tongues, and their chief god was Mitra. There you go, Mitra. At the height of their power, their religion was of a refined and imaginative type, and they did not practice human sacrifice. Well, that's good to know. That's good news. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Back to the phoenix and the sword. On the sword. Okay, so Thoth-Amon, closes the door behind these 4 conspirators, these stooges. He climbs the stairs, back to Ascalante's penthouse, still thinking to himself what a bunch of morons these 4 actually are. And he says so in no uncertain terms to Ascalante. But Ascalante doesn't seem worried. He twirls his evil moustache, sips his evil wine from an evil goblet, and in between villainous laughters, he proceeds to explain that yes, those guys are idiots, but useful idiots. Like the whole plan is in motion thanks to the resources and influence of those four. You see, for example, it's thanks to Dion's wealth, bribes and whatnot, that the necessary distraction was created to get some of the imperial legions away from the capital. A bunch of carefully donated cases of wine and liquor by Dion, and voila! The Pictish pirates are now attacking the border, so the legion has now been sent to the rescue. Volmana also did his own thing, getting his uncle, King Numa of Numidia, to request the presence of Count Trocero of Poitain, seneschal of Aquilonia, accompanied by an imperial escort, as well as his own troops, and Prospero, King Conan's right-hand man. So so those guys will also be out of town, Trocero and Prospero. I don't know, man. Was it really a great idea, putting these two rhyming names of two different characters in the same sentence? I don't know. Oh, well, anyway, the bottom line is only Conan's personal bodyguard will remain in town tonight. So yeah, tonight's the night. Tonight, the king dies with 16 desperate rogues, desperados. We enter the throne room and we can't fail, basically. So says Ascalante. Only one problem, yeah? He continues to Thoth-Amon. Do you know what, mate? Do you know what? That Dion fella, yeah? Too nervous. I don't like that. Did you see that? Sweaty palms, all pale and fidgety. Clearly the guy is panicking about tonight's plan. If he shows up at court, he's likely to give the whole game away. You know what I mean? Conan is going to spot it immediately on his face that there's something wrong. Just goes to show, coup d'etat, regime change, not for everybody. Tell you what you'll do, my dear Thoth-Amon. Go and catch up with him. Make sure he does stay put in his country estate, like I told him to do. And that he doesn't turn up in the capital, until the job is done, yeah? Now, off you go. Attaboy. All right? And Thoth-Amon does go, but he's all sulky and stuff, Always like that with you. Thoth-Amon do this, Thoth-Amon do that. You know what? If I had my ring back, yeah, you would be begging to work for me. And I would consider your application. Maybe. And of course, Ascalante, is very understanding. He goes, okay, I get it. You resent the fact that I enslaved you with my lower grade magic only because you lost your ring. But look, couldn't we just pull together as a team? I mean, I'm sure you'd get more out of it if you just cooperated. Okay, no, I'm lying. No, he says nothing of the sort. he cracks his whip on Thoth-Amon's face and, yeah, well, that's how it is and tough luck, mate. Now go and do as you're told. And Thoth-Amon goes and does as he's told. Still cartoon mumbling to himself, we imagine. Cut to Conan's throne room, where King Conan is bored out of his arse, having to go through some papers, documents, king stuff, while his right-hand man, Prospero, is tightening his breastplate, whistling like it's nothing. Clearly he's on friendly terms with the king, as I told you. The latter going, I'll tell you what, Prospero, mate, these official policy papers and documents wear me out in ways that even fighting on the battlefield all day never did. Back in the day, remember the days? I wish I could go with you in this expedition to keep the border safe and kick some ass, side by side with you, like in the good old days. Remember the days, huh? And Prospero is all like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? It's the game you got to play right now, You see how it's played out. It's the classical trope. I don't mean trope in a bad sense, you know. Literature has to have tropes. They're kind of like staples. And here we're looking at the king who could conquer a kingdom with his hands tied behind his back, but he's not very good at ruling it, or he's not very happy with ruling it. And he'd rather go back to the old days of looting and plundering. Yeah, that's right, George R. R. Martin. I'm looking at you and the character you created, Robert Baratheon. Yeah, imagine, because think about Robert Baratheon. You know, all you have to do is just imagine a fat, middle-aged Conan bored out of his arse in the throne room. Well, I mean, okay, at least Robert E. Howard wasn't as cruel as that. You know, Conan is still a fierce warrior. And I know, that's where the similarities end, because Robert Baratheon was highborn in the Song of Ice and Fire, clearly not a barbarian. But, you know, all those other features, fearsome warrior, character arc, etc. Yeah, they're all there. Anyway, Conan. Conan is complaining to Prospero that this whole political environment is a major pain in the ass. Not to mention that Aquilonians no longer see him as a liberator. Prospero has an answer to that. He goes, hey, you have that chief propagandist, Rinaldo, to thank for that. Why don't we hang him? Come on, it'll be fun. That should cheer you up. Nah, mate. Nah. Leave him be. He's harmless, that dude. Besides, he has talent. You know, in the early days of my rule, he moved me with his songs, actually, says Conan, which gives us another great glimpse into this character, because we see that he's not one for gratuitous violence, even when it would be theoretically justified. And he doesn't have a tyrant bone in him, you know? Still, he does have enough cunning to sense that there's something wrong with the current geopolitical situation. He goes, I bet it's not by chance that the Picts have of late so fiercely assailed the frontiers, so that the Bosonians have called for aid to beat them back. Hence your good self, Prospero, in your current mission, off to lead those troops. By the way, you still here? Shouldn't you be going? And Prospero is all like, sure thing, I'm off, mate. Don't wait up late. What are you gonna do in the meantime? Well, you know me, gotta catch up with all the reading I had to postpone when I was too busy being a barbarian. Plus, I want to update the maps of Hyboria. Those maps we have around here, because you know what? Not one of them has a correct shape and location of those places up north, like Vanheim or Cimmeria, where I was born. And this is where we get a weird sort of world building, because Prospero goes, those places, yeah, you know what? I used to think they were a myth. A myth? Which, really? I mean, if you just look at a map of Hyboria, I mean, Aquilonia literally borders with Cimmeria. I don't know, I somehow don't buy it. But we do get an introduction to Vanheim. Listen to this. This is from, again, the Hyborian Age pseudo essay. The inhabitants of Vanheim are tall and fair and blue-eyed. Their god is Ymir, the frost giant. The frost giant. And each tribe has its own king. They are wayward and fierce. They fight all day, drink ale, and roar their wild songs all night. Keep in mind all of that for my commentary on the frost giant daughter, which is literally my next commentary after this one. Also, Cimmeria gets a brief description, but there will be time to get into that. Cimmeria, oh yeah, I'll be giving you more info about Cimmeria in the next commentaries. So Prospero takes off. He just goes, all right, off to kick some Pictish ass. Bye. And Conan is all like, be gone, you rascal. And he slaps him in the ass for good luck. Yeah, no, he doesn't do that. I'm just being whimsical. Yeah, what can you do? That's my mood today. Anyway, it was at this point that the original Cull story had another unrelated development. later cut out for this story. Basically, the king and another visitor petitioning, asking for a favor from the king. Is this young man in love, who tragically can't marry this girl, all because of this strict caste system they have in Aquilonia. So he's unhappy, and the king goes, I'll see what I can do. At which point he travels downtown, incognito, to hear the girl's version of the story, because you have to hear all sides. And he finds her, somehow manages to get her to tell him her sob story, at which point she goes, oh, if only I had the courage to talk to the king and tell him all I just told you, unknown stranger. But I will never have the confidence to face him and talk frankly to him face to face like I just did with you, kind and muscular stranger. And the king just goes, oh, I think the king knows your predicament, if you know what I mean. And revelation time. Oh my God, actually, oh Mitra. No, my God, oh my Mitra. You are the king. Well, what an unexpected turn of events. Okay, all of that subplot didn't make it to the final cut for this Conan story, which I kind of see why. Because it's not like these two characters end up giving the king any help with the challenges he's about to face, the kind of help that turns out to be crucial for the final outcome. So yeah, Robert, you know what? Good call cutting that out. My dissertation supervisor used to say, if in doubt, cut it out. There you go. Now, what we do cut next to is at Dion's country house, where he was told to stay put until the coup d'etat was accomplished. So there he is in his garden, biting his fingernails, being all nervous and stuff. And Thothemon is also there, babysitting him and making sure he doesn't do anything stupid. And Thothemon is like, listen, mate, chill, yeah? There's something I've got to tell you. That guy Ascalante, he can't be trusted. He's got plans. He's got plans for when you get on the throne. He wants to stab you in the back and seize the throne for himself. But if you follow my instructions, we can outsmart him, yeah? We just have to... Oi, are you listening? But Ascalante is not listening the whole time. He's all like, did I leave the gas on? See, he couldn't care less what Thothemon is telling him, because he considers him just like another tool at his service, like so many rich men do, which is another comment that reveals what Robert E. Howard thought of society. But Thothemon, he's not giving up. Listen, mate, I know what I'm talking about. Back in Stygia, I was feared, I will have you know, and hated at the same time, because I was the most powerful sorcerer / priest of the serpent god Set. Know what I mean? I could conjure horrible, ghastly things from the abyss. You don't want to know how ugly those beings are. You get nightmares just seeing a picture of them. And I used to able to materialize them into this world just like that. And use them to kill my enemies, thanks to that magical ring I had. The Ring of Set, it was called. Not very imaginatively. Okay, I might not have the ring with me anymore. And if I catch the guy who stole it from me, okay, but I can still give you proper counsel and guidance, all right? So you can be a step ahead of Ascalante. And are you listening? Yeah, no. He's hopeless. This Dion guy is hopeless. He's not even listening to Thothemon. He just goes, ring. Oh, yeah, ring, you say. Yeah, that reminds me. Didn't I have a lucky ring somewhere? Bought it from a Shemite thief who swore he stole it from a wizard far to the south. What have I done with it? So he fumbles through a secret compartment in his marble seat. Oh, there it is in all its glory. And sure enough, what do you know? I bet you've guessed where this is going. I mean, if you've read the story, you already know where this is going. It's a ring made of metal like copper and shaped in the form of a scaled serpent, coiled in 3 loops, with its tail in its mouth and with yellow gems for eyes. Yep, that's right. It's the one ring Thothamon has been looking for over the last few decades. So he screams on top of his lungs, "My precious!" Okay, I knew you knew I was going to say that, right? I mean, you must have seen it coming a mile away. But yeah, the jury is still out on whether Tolkien really did take inspiration from this story for the One Ring. The general consensus, from what I can see, seems to be that probably not. Be it as it may, Thothamon, does proceed to do exactly what Smeagol did to Deagle in order to snatch the ring and not have to put up with any complaint. Here, let me read you the quote from the text. The last reference to Dion. "A fool to the end. He died in mad terror, not knowing why." So yes, Thothamon finally kills Dion, and all right, we are one conspirator less. Later on, Thothamon, now reunited with his old friend, the ring, has become unstoppable. So a while later, he dips the ring into Dion's blood. Oh, that came in handy. Just the amount he needed to do his evil magic. And here's another quote. "He whispered dark names and grisly incantations forgotten the world over, save in the grim hinterlands of dark Stygia, where monstrous shapes move in the dusk of the tombs." There you have it. The fact that this Thothamon dude could summon demons with the ring was kind of like a Chekhov's gun, right? I mean, coincidentally, we are now in the third act where the gun is fired. And what emerges from the shadows is sort of like a gigantic monster. It looks like a gigantic baboon. But think a really ugly baboon as opposed to a suave and charming baboon, And ferocious, a really ugly, Thothamon, pulls out a sandal belonging to Ascalante. He always carries one with him, just in case. Oh, you want to see what Ascalante's sandals look like? Yeah, there's one. I always carry one in my pockets, just in case. So he goes, and he shoves it right under the baboon's nose, and he goes, "You sniff that? Yeah? Yeah? The scent you smell belongs to a guy I want you to find and rip apart, tear him to pieces, and everyone else around him for good measure. Now go and do my bidding." Oh gosh, I wanted to say that in ages. Evil laughter. So the creature rushes off, and we know a bloodbath is on its agenda right now. Yep, busy agenda. Death, 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 death. Quick shower, death, death, death. All right, okay. To quote, award yourself 5 points if you know where that quote comes from. All right, so cut to Conan, who is restless in his bedchamber, with its high golden dome, and he must be sensing that some kind of danger lurks around the corner, because he has the instincts of an animal, still well attuned, not obfuscated by civilization. Robert E. Howard will expand on that concept in later stories. But he finally does fall asleep and has the weirdest dream. Dream music, da, 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 da. The one, augmented scale, arpeggio, whatever. Imagine it played by a harp. And he's falling asleep. All right, so anyway, so he dreams he's in a great dark corridor that seems to be cut in solid black stone, and he's walking towards a strange voice that's calling his name. And somehow Conan knows he's in a place that has been sealed and barred to regular mortal people for like centuries. Here, let me read you the passage. Ceiling and walls were highly polished and gleamed dully, and they were carved with figures of ancient heroes and half-forgotten gods. He shuddered to see the vast shadowy outlines of the nameless old ones, and he knew somehow that mortal feet had not traversed the corridor for centuries. Nameless old ones. I mean, a Lovecraftian quote if I've ever seen one. And still in his dreams, he climbs the weirdest set of stairs, each step carved in the shape of an ancient serpent god set. There it is again. All around him, esoteric symbols, ancient and abhorrent. And the voice keeps calling him, "Oi, Conan! Today would be good, mate." Okay, sorry, I broke the suspense. But yeah, so Conan follows that voice and finds himself in a strange crypt and sees an old man out of magic because the whole place is pitch dark. You see, this old man, kind of like ethereal, diaphanous, or a word like that, complete with white beard, and he's sitting on a tomb, as you do. We'll find out that it's his own tomb. "Good evening," he goes. "I am Epimetreus. And Conan, "Surely not." Conan is skeptical. I've been catching up on my reading since my relocation to Aquilonia, so I am now well versed in the story of this kingdom. I happen to know that Epimetreus died like 1500 years ago. Epimetreus the sage. Smashing bloke, from what I read. Very wise and very dead. But listen, you're dreaming, and I'm speaking to you from the unseen world. So it's all good. And I've had my eyes on you for a while, Conan the Cimmerian. You see, I know who you are. Listen up, you're destined to great things, but first there are dangers, plots, conspiracies against you, and you must overcome these. "Ah, well." Conan doesn't seem worried. "Just show me where those guys are at and stand back and enjoy the show. I'll eat them for breakfast." Ha ha ha. But the old man cautions, Nah, mate. Your barbarous ways might work on regular people, but here it's an unnatural foe you must watch out for, Supernatural is probably a better definition. These are creatures from the outer voids to take material shape and rend and devour at the bidding of evil magicians. Epimetreus is telling Conan all this right after Thothamon unleashed the baboon. So yeah, we know what he's referring to. And actually, he does confirm this Stygian guy, no need to mention any names, he is a neophyte of the cult of the serpent god Set, sure enough. You know what I mean? I mean, he's using the magical powers of this cult for dark purposes. So he has basically misunderstood the original message of that ancient religion, which, being the dark and esoteric cult of a snake god, its original message wasn't exactly about cheerful stuff, cotton candy, lollipops. Anyway, the point is, he doesn't even know what he's getting himself into. I should know. I fought Set throughout my life, and it wasn't pretty, I tell you. So what you need is a magic spell from yours truly. There, I want to help you out. Okay? But Conan is still puzzled because he goes, but why me? I mean, I wasn't even born here. I am an outlander and a barbarian. According to what your Aquilonians keep saying. But the old geezer, sees behind these shallow, prejudices. He goes, "Look, mate, do you want the spell or not? Besides, I can see that you're good for Aquilonia's future, so, good enough for me. Now, hold out your sword," which Conan does, and Epimetreus traces with a bony finger a strange symbol that glows like white fire in the shadows. At which point, Conan wakes up from the dream, swearing to himself, never again to eat pepperoni pizza right before going to bed. No, but seriously, okay, so he realizes that he's gripping his favorite sword in his right hand. And the symbol, the phoenix, is actually there. And it kind of looks like a phoenix, so there you go. So basically, like a bird, essentially. But there's no time to admire the craftsmanship of the freshly made carving on the sword, because some noise is coming from the corridor outside. So he puts his armor on and goes out to investigate. And all around the palace, yeah, everything is happening according to the plan devised by the conspirators. The guards are leaving their post, the commanding officer having been bribed, Escalante's 16 desperados plus Grommel and Rinaldo are advancing through the hall, hiding behind the ever-present carved pillars. There's always carved pillars. Exquisite architectural feature, I must say. And when the coast is clear, they rush to the huge door to Conan's chamber, ready to kill him. Grommel kicks it open. They all burst into the shout of "Death to the tyrant!" And surprise, there's the king, but not naked and asleep and vulnerable, but ready for combat. Sword in hand and all. "I've been expecting you," the old "I've been expecting you" ploy. But they all change. They all charge because at the end of the day, I mean, they're still 20-1. Grommel charges first, and Conan makes mincemeat out of him. There goes, shattering his own sword. At which point he recognizes him and has one of those et tu brute kind of a moment, because he didn't expect to be betrayed by that guy. But there's no time for speeches a la, "Oh, well, la-di-da." That just goes to show, doesn't it? You never really know anyone, do you? Yeah, there's no time for that, because everyone is pressing around him, attacking him, so he manages to reach the wall and grabs a battle axe that just happens to be there handy, a relic that had been hanging there undisturbed for like half a century, and yet somehow still sharp. Here, let me read the quote. He was like a tiger among baboons. How appropriate. Sidestepped and spun, offering an ever-moving target, while his axe wove a shining wheel of death about him. Oh, Robert E. Howard really relished writing these sentences. Yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of the sort of action that's taking place right now. So after killing a couple more guys, Conan also recognizes Rinaldo. "You too, huh? Ha, I should have known." And shatters the dude's sword in a dozen shards. Escalante's all like, "Oh no, you don't," and it keeps trying to stab him ferociously. And it's not as if Conan wasn't already bleeding from several wounds, but meh, what are you gonna do? And next is Volmana's turn to show his face. "Hey, I'm also here. Hi." And Conan just goes, "Oh, sure. Only you were missing from this tableau of idiots." And Rinaldo, in the meantime, I just can't put this book down, I swear. Let me just go to the next page. Okay, so Rinaldo, I mean, he really must have a death wish, because he charges at Conan with nothing but a dagger. And all the while, Conan is like, "Look, mate, I don't want to fight you. Take it easy." Whoa, what's that? All right, you've asked for it, mate. So he proceeds to smash his skull. Poof. And this is where Robert E. Howard makes this point, and not for the last time, that civilized people are no match for pure, raw, barbaric strength. Here, this is what he says. "The men faltered, wild, criminal, and dissolute though they were, yet they came of a breed men called civilized, with a civilized background. Here was the barbarian, the natural killer. They shrank back. The dying tiger could still deal death." Could still deal death is a recurrent sort of a phrase in Robert E. Howard's writing. We'll find him again. We'll find it again. So that's sort of like the explanation as to why Conan has the upper hand in this combat. And also, let's not forget that he has already slain two or three conspirators. There's only Escalante left, who is kind of like the ringleader, but still the smarter among those desperados must be thinking, wait a minute, I'm in it only for the reward. I figured I could reap it. I could reap a good reward in the new regime. But if there's no one left to reward me when it's all said and done, is it even worth continuing to fight this scary bloke, Conan? So, some of them are deserting, and Ascalante must be sensing this because he's all like, "Attack, you cowards!" While Conan dispatches of another dude like it was nothing. And that's when they all hear it. Remember the giant baboon? Here, let me read you the passage. Here we go. At that instant, a fearful scream burst from the rogues at the door as a black misshapen shadow fell across the wall. All but Ascalante wheeled at that cry, and then, howling like dogs, they burst blindly through the door in a raving, blaspheming mob and scattered through the corridors in screaming flight. Yeah, and picture this with the thing, with a Benny Hill theme. Because that's what they do. They're running around like a bunch of idiots. Thothamon's creature, has made a few of those desperados soil their breeches, presumably. But all Ascalante can think of is to attack Conan while he's wiping his eyes from the gallons of blood that has been spilled on his face, except that before he can do anything, he's attacked by the evil monkey. Yay! Straight out of Family Guy. That's what we're going to... Let's call him the evil monkey. And he turns around to face the monster just in time to stare into the face of nightmare and lunacy. A great black thing born in no sane or human world. Its slavering black fangs near his throat, and the glare of its yellow eyes shrivel his limbs as a killing wind shrivels young corn. And so exit Ascalante, who, in the final moments of his life, seems to recognize a strange likeness to Thothamon in that baboon. So I guess that these creatures, when materializing into this physical plane, must somehow borrow certain features from whoever summoned them, I guess. And Conan looks at the monster and realizes that no weapon or physical prowess can defeat the creature. But who am I kidding? This is Conan. So he just grabs the creature, falls back, so they both wrestle on the floor for a bit, at which point he finds the hilt of his half-broken sword, and with all the strength he's capable of, he stabs the baboon. It's not clear where, but I imagine it's a deadly spot, like a temple or the jugular or something. And then he backs off a bit to watch the monster twitch and convulse desperately. It seemed to him that the thing was melting and disintegrating into a slimy, unstable mass. Oh, just the sort of image I was hoping for. And it's at this point that the entire court is roused from sleep. Wow, about time, huh? And they're all like, "Oh, what was that racket? Oh, an assassination attempt. Oh, an attempted regicide. Yeah, that's it." And they're all there, the guards bandaging Conan's wounds, the latter sitting there demanding wine. Because Conan, slain is thirsty work. It's one of his mottos. He has it printed on a t-shirt. And Publius is there, identifying the bodies of the conspirators. Always a stickler for procedures, This Publius. Rommel, Volmana, and Rinaldo. Well, I never. And who's this? Ascalante? What was he doing here? Last I heard he was raiding caravans out there in the southern desert. And why does he have this terrified look in his eyes? Aha, well, Conan, explains. Yeah, there was this gigantic thing, kind of like a cross between a monkey and a Stygian mummy. An evil monkey and an evil Stygian mummy, to be precise. I don't know how I managed to whack him, but I suspect it's got something to do with this phoenix, see here, carved on my sword, see? That fella, Epimetreus, did that for me in a dream. And this is where the high priest of Mitra who happens to be within earshot for some reason, he just goes, I beg your pardon? Surely that's not possible. But Conan proceeds, to describe the secret chamber from his dream, down to the weird snake-shaped staircase, at which point the high priest just goes, shh, no, 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 these things are secret, not for the uninitiated, is that the word? These are all part of our mysteries, you see. What you're basically describing is the burial place of Epimetheus the Wise, which is top secret, Actually, even the location has been forgotten, so even we priests don't know where it is exactly. So everyone believes the story, the dream, the phoenix carved on the blade, and all that's left of the monstrous creature is an unremovable stain on the floor, in the twisted shape of an enormous baboon. Dun dun dun. So they all have a jolly good laugh, and Conan keeps guzzling his wine, and that's how the Phoenix on the Sword ends. As I said, it eventually appeared in the December 1932 issue of Weird Tales and was an instant hit, as indicated in the February 1933 edition of the Letters column, which was called, are you ready? The Eerie. Yeah, Eyrie. Love that word. Of course, it means nest, but it personally reminds me of A Song of Ice and Fire, the Eerie in the Vale. Here George R. R. Martin cropping up again. So anyway, that's Conan's story, the very first Conan story Robert E. Howard wrote, and I hope you enjoyed the commentary. If you've just read the story, and if you read it a while ago, maybe I've spurred you to give it another read. I don't know, whatever may be the case, or whatever the case might be. My syntax sucks today. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to do all of the things that people do under such circumstances. And I look forward to talking to you again when I will be doing my commentary for The Frost Giant's Daughter. So see you there.